desperation. I see the light. I'm not a lover. I am a fight. Forgot the secret.
So, have you ever looked back on an experience and later realized that it actually shaped you more than you originally thought? That's how I felt after I went to a mission trip in Haiti when I was in high school. I had always known I wanted to be an architect, but it wasn't until I served in Haiti that I realized how I wanted to be an architect. I volunteered in Port-au-Prince at an orphanage and a village school. While there, I witnessed extreme poverty. I saw crumbling buildings, eroded mountain sides, and destitute living conditions. Naively, I would draw Haiti-inspired mansions like the suburban ones I saw growing up in South Florida. I thought there must be a better way for architecture to make a difference. So while in college, I learned about public interest design. This prioritizes working with communities instead of just for communities and puts the public's interests at the forefront of the design process. And so I started to explore how I could best serve others through architecture, like this drawing of a restoration center for women who had been trafficked in human trafficking rings. My personal involvement with public interest design is through volunteering with the American Institute of Architects Austin chapter. I'm also a project architect licensed at Michael Schuh Office of Architecture. I design everything from office buildings to high-end residential homes in Westlake Hills, but I focus more on adaptive reuse in the urban core. So there are multiple ways that firms can be involved in public interest design. Some firms are 100% devoted to projects. Others devote a portion of their staff. Some devote 1% of their services to pro bono projects. And like most traditional firms actually engage by individuals going out into opportunities like with AI Austin Design Voice. So Design Voice is a volunteer-led grassroots committee with a mission to help serve the needs in our community through design-centered projects. And we work deeply with organizations to facilitate partnerships where we can connect design teams to help meet their needs. So one of the needs that we saw was a lack of bus stop shelters in Austin. There's over 100 bus stops in Austin that have high ridership, and we worked with Cat Metro to find an underserved area in East Austin that could use some inspiration and a design competition. And we adopted the charrette model and developed a program and criteria to create an exemplary place-making bus stop shelter. The competition required design teams to use a framework of public interest and participatory design. We surveyed over 100 bus riders, and we got their feedback for how the current bus stops were being used and what they liked about their communities. So we use the charrette process as an effective community design event, and that attracts multidisciplinary teams that help support these local organizations and nonprofits' design needs. Over 30 architects, landscape architects, and engineers and bus riders came to the Cat Metro charrette in 2014. Eventually, Cat Metro selected a winning project called Mi Jardine. This was designed by landscape professionals Sarah Partridge and Melissa Robledo. Mi Jardine is a vibrant pedestrian plaza that reflects the diversity and cultural heritage of East Austin, the Riverside area. The whimsical shade structures shade bus riders and funnel water that waters a native species garden. Mi Jardine's design team is now building relationships in the community, engaging the neighborhood, and raising funds with a fiscal sponsor. Last year, they led 2 successful campaigns that crowdsourced over $10,000, and over 50 volunteers came to a garden planting and a block party last May. I'm also here to talk about a project we partnered with Mobile Loaves and Fishes on. Mobile Loaves and Fishes serves the homeless in Austin. You guys know about them. They're pretty awesome. What some people don't know is that there's over 2,000 homeless people that live on the streets in Austin. Well, 800 of them are unsheltered. And Mobile Loaves and Fishes came up with the idea of Community First Village as a model that housing will never solve homelessness, but community will. So Design Voice partnered with Mobile Loaves to have a national design competition to design a 200 square foot microhome. And these were to provide the basic needs of a shelter, but also promote a sense of place and relationship building and empowerment for the residents. We got 54 designs, some of which are shown behind me, different and unique approaches. The micropod design created a flexible unit that could be oriented to optimize solar and ventilation concerns. There's also a dog trot model that uses a historic typology and divides the small private space with a larger public space and a covered breezeway in between. There's also a red-doored Hope House that actually became a micro-chapel for the community. And then there's the Porch with a Home, designed by Paige, that inspired ownership and empowerment by providing a generous porch that could be customized to each of the residents' needs. Through providing opportunities like the Tiny Victories competition, Design Voice becomes a vehicle for public interest design where traditional architecture firms can engage in this type of practice. These designs also inspired the home building community to come alongside Mobile Loaves and Fishes and the architects who are working pro bono to build 59 of these homes that are either currently built or in progress of being built. Over 20 home builders did that. And Community First Village is continuing to grow. So the current 27 acres now has an adjacent 24 acres that's going to also be built onto. And so Design Voice is currently working on a survey for the design teams and the residents to gather feedback that we can use to improve the designs. We're also might host another competition for the rest of the micro homes. We also have another organization in town called Open Architecture Austin, which I also helped lead, another volunteer group that is meeting with residents and designing a micro home for the community that's larger and includes a bathroom and kitchen. So it's immensely important for creative professionals to engage in public interest design. It's our responsibility to our communities, so how about we use our creative potential to address truly pressing needs throughout Austin. Design should be empowering disadvantaged communities, ensuring sustained affordability of our neighborhoods, planning for walkable and connected cities, and designing equitable, sustainable, and healthy buildings for all. Should we aspire just to be decorators of fortune? The rich will be fine. And rather, let's strive to be designers of justice, equity, and inclusion. That's beautiful architecture. I invite all of you, architect or not, to engage and lead within your communities. Our collective actions will bring ladder throughout Austin, advancing the voice of the underserved and working with our neighbors to meet everyone's needs through design.
So a question I've been asked a lot is, are your characters real? I write fiction usually, so this is a complicated question. I thought I would look at the development of Ellis, who is one of the star-crossed lovers in White Fur, which is about social disparity in 1980s America, to explore what real means. I started writing as a kid, and life in my notebook was always more real in ways than life outside the notebook. I think this is because I could decipher meaning or create meaning when I was writing. My first novel was theoretically fictional. The character is in her 20s. She lives on North 7th and Meeker in Brooklyn, wants to be a painter, and she's a hot mess. What I didn't fully see then was how autobiographical the story was, and real in that sense, and typical of first novels. Because when I wrote it, I was in my 20s, living on North 7th and Meeker, trying to be a writer, and I was a royal mess. But with Elise, I wanted the character to be real, but not based on me. I knew White Fur would star a 19-year-old born to a Dutch-Irish-American mother and a Puerto Rican father, raised in a city devastated by deindustrialization, raised in a minimum wage, single-parent household. The challenge was turning these facts into someone with a soul. First, I looked at a whole range of photos, collecting concrete detail, but also trying to register environments, emotion, undercurrents, love and frustration, all of which I believe exists in great photography. Music can also infuse a story, and these late 80s female rappers made music that is tough and playful and funny, that's tomboy and feminine, that's badass and vulnerable. And their collective spirit seeped into Elise. Random Family is a feat of immersion journalism, and reading it taught me how to witness subjects as LeBlanc did for 11 years in the Bronx, without needing to own them or control them in the writing. She set a really high bar for honoring and transmitting another person's reality. I wrote the text for a nonfiction photography book recently, and portraying the daughter, Haley, and her very complex life as an openly gay woman in rural Mississippi, without summarizing or classifying her, planted seeds for how I would write Ellis. Finally, in terms of inspiration, the women I work with in prison have told me their stories and I've told them mine. And the solidarity we earned doing that opened my eyes to how raw truth and trust function in anyone's sense of reality. So when I finally sat down to write White Fur, I tried to sit in what felt like a dream state, and I took notes on the ideas and the details and the objects that kind of bubbled into my mind. I then transferred these almost cryptic notes into the machine, and I started to sort them and curate them and evaluate them, and eventually placed the ones that felt true into the manuscript. And this is how Ellis started to grow. There comes a moment in the final draft when I can feel something almost like a heartbeat or heat coming off of her skin. It's a really visceral turning point, and that's when I know that Ellis has become real to me. Then it's her turn to go out into the world and become real, hopefully, in other people's imaginations. Getting a sneak peek at these covers before publication was my first look at how someone else might see her, and specifically how these designers saw her seeing us, digital. A Brazilian artist got an early digital manuscript long before publication, and one day tweeted this drawing of Ellis into the universe. And it kind of took my breath away to see a stranger in another country manifesting this person. So along those lines, and to make book PR more exciting, I teamed up with a few Austin artists who I love and asked them to make pieces not portraying Ellis herself, but rather conveying her freedom, her essence, and her sensuality. And I have loved the outcomes. Filmmaker friends also made a book trailer for White Fur, leaving out Ellis's face, but using snippets from the book and a montage of shots to culminate in a powerful sense of who she is while leaving you room to imagine her. And at a book launch party next week, a set designer is building a photo booth based on a Manhattan hotel room where Ellis hides out for part of the story. So party guests can lie on the bed, they can be Ellis for a moment, and they can be photographed. We've also gone into development as a TV series. So for the past 6 months, I've been writing and imagining Ellis as she exists past the book. And we've also started talking about casting, and it is just wild to me to imagine an actor bringing her real life, her past, into the role of Ellis. This investigation into whether Ellis is real hasn't answered the question with a yes or no, as much as it has illuminated for me what I believe my goal is and what I always want it to be, to realize a character and then to watch her roam free.
So the do-it-yourself philosophy, as you've all heard of that. I'm going to speak to how it relates to business, the music business in particular, or the best I can, to my knowledge. Everyone's kind of has their own way of looking at it, for sure. It was popularized in the 90s in the punk scene, but it's branched out a lot since then. This is where I'm from. That's when I was born. I had hippie parents that moved here to this cool arty town, which was a great place to sort of have that DIY ethic because you could really blossom in Austin. It didn't hurt being here when I found out about music. My earliest memories are playing with my dad's stereo and getting in trouble messing with it. So eventually he recorded me cassette tapes on a cassette player that my mom had got me at a garage sale. And these are some of the bands I heard first. Like any kid, I wanted to find my own path and started finding other bands in the 80s. These are the bands I could find. It was the MTV era, and I got to see a lot of them live. So yeah, remember Sound Warehouse? Sound Warehouse, anybody? Anyway, over the years, I was lucky enough to have a cool older sister and cool older aunts and uncles who introduced me to a lot of more cutting-edge bands. And this took me away from the arena rock world and had me going to venues where you were feet away from the band, and it broke down that barrier between artist and fan. And you'd see the band behind the merch booth selling merch. It was really strange to me, but exciting. Not to jump too far ahead, but later I ended up booking a lot of these bands as a promoter. These are all shows I booked. That last slide is of Fugazi, who I named our company after, and they were the ultimate DIY band in the 90s. Booked their own tours, put out their own records. So anyway, Irwin Center, Aquafest, those were the big shows you went to in the 80s. Luckily, I had cool parents who let me go to some occasionally, and eventually I found Sound Exchange Records, where you could find out about the most amazing bands, local and touring, and Liberty Lunch and clubs like that were really opened your eyes, because all of a sudden you were intimately with these bands. I started playing in bands. I wasn't good, but it was fun. I was passionate. Me and my friends said, let's figure it out. Let's just do it ourselves, make a band, try and book a show. And we started doing that. I don't know, it just made sense. No record label was going to put us out or any of our friends out because we weren't very good and they wouldn't have made their money back. So we figured out how to put out records. I started a record label, put out a bunch of my friends' bands, I put out my bands. Didn't make any money doing it, but we hadn't figured out the business side of DIY yet. We were just trying to break even. This magazine, Book Your Own Fucking Life, was the Bible of touring. This is how you booked a show in the 90s. It had a phone number for everyone in the country who would put on a DIY show at a coffee shop or a house or whatever. You called these people up, and that's how you booked a tour. So we went on tour a couple times, and that's how we did it. These are flyers. There was no internet. You literally wheat pasted these that you made at Kinko's all over town and handed them out at every show and every coffee shop and hoped people would show up to your show. And this is usually where shows were. Self-respecting venues also wouldn't book us. So you VFWs, recreation centers, house shows, you drag a PA out, have a friend work the door. If you had enough money to pay the rent, then cool, maybe there was a little left for the bands, and that's the best we could do, but it was exciting. So that led to me working here. I ran this place for 8 or 9 years, and I booked it. I kind of feel like maybe my putting on shows, DIY style, and when I was a teen was sort of like high school for music business, and Emos was like college for music business. I didn't go to college, but I went there. After a while I left, the owner sold it, and I started this company with some friends, and I've been traveling a lot, seeing that every other city had a promotional company that could put on shows everywhere of all sizes, and I wanted that for Austin. We were missing that. We just had clubs, and we didn't have anyone kind of tying it together. For about 10 years we had Transmission. Then I started Fun, about a year before I left Emos. Well, thanks, you've heard of it. We did it for 10 years until it sort of imploded at the end. That's a taco cannon. It's a cannon that shoots tacos, if that says anything on if that gives you an idea. I did that part of it with partners and with a great staff and some people I worked with on the regular. It was more of a do-it-ourselves mindset at that point. We worked together with the hope of growing this. And towards the end, sometimes partnerships don't work out, which is why we started Margin Walker, which is named after a Fugazi song. This happened really quickly. When Transmission imploded, like the next day we announced this. It was one of the most DIY things I had to do. We just rebranded it, figured it out, and it grew quickly. We have offices in Dallas, San Antonio, Houston. Then we didn't want to get rid of 10 years of fun, so we renamed that Sound on Sound, which we launched last year. It's basically the same spirit of fun, except it takes place at a Renaissance fair just east of town. So bands play in front of castles, and there's knights jousting while a hip-hop group is playing. So DIY in general has become big. I mean, there's a network. You can look up anything on YouTube. There are books on DIY. Because of that, I feel like it's a lot easier to start a business from the ground up. You can make a sustainable business with that DIY mindset, just Googling that shit at this point, which is amazing. In the music business, it's even easier. You've got social media to promote your business. You've got Pitchfork and websites like that to review your records or to review records. You've even got GarageBand. You can record an entire record by yourself and self-release it. Like, that's amazing to me. Anyway, I'd just say that to all the young kids who are out there, there's old people like me who always bitch and complain about how hard it was and how long it took to get where we got. But I think there's nothing more DIY than all these young people being able to do everything themselves so easily.
So, what is home is a question that's really powerful for me. When my mom passed away many years ago, it totally shifted our family dynamic. And the project that I want to share with you guys tonight is really about a long journey that I'm on to figure out the answer to that question. In 1993, I started buying and collecting signs from people on the street. I started doing it because I was uncomfortable, I would ignore them, and it was a way for me to engage. This is a sign that's 20 years old. I knew from the beginning that I was going to do something with art, but it wasn't until I was in grad school many years later that I realized all I needed to do was to share the signs. This is one of the first large-scale installations, and for me, this has been just a fulfilling project. I keep learning things about it. While I was in grad school, one of the things that I did, I was taking an interventionist art class. I would gather dozens of people. We'd get at a busy intersection and hold signs. You would think that with that many people and signs, people wouldn't ignore us, but they still did. I had a classmate that I went out with, and we would photograph places. This is under an underpass, but places where people slept. It continued to teach me about the notions of home and homelessness, and it made me really grateful for all the things that I take for granted. In 2012, I did my first TEDx talk about this project, and it was then that I talked about my childhood. Now, things are okay now with my dad, but when I was growing up, they were not. He was abusive. He did not know what to do with his anger, and home was not safe for me. And that realization led me to this second question, which is there a part of me that was homeless? And I would ask that of you. It's not the same as being homeless, obviously, but it started to help me connect a little bit more with people on the street. This notion that there was a part of me that I didn't have, and for me, that was safety. As DJ mentioned, we traveled across the country filming a documentary in 2014. We met amazing people. This is Robert in Cincinnati. His wife had just passed away. He lost everything because of the medical expenses. He told us how grateful he was that his 3 sons were grown and didn't have to see him on the street. Cheryl in Detroit, still to this day, is the first and only person who was so excited that I bought her sign that she reached in the car and hugged my neck. She walks around Detroit with an oxygen tank and has to make $70 a month for her subsidized housing. I met Michael in Las Vegas, literally 5 or 6 blocks away from the most ostentatious hotels on the planet. Michael's sign is what drew me in. all it said was spare change, but it was scrawled in a ballpoint pen, and it was like I could feel the pain in his writing. These are just a handful of the people we met that led to the release of this documentary, which was a true labor of love for us. What it's taught me is how much I enjoy starting conversations about people on the streets, because it seems like everybody struggles with what to do, how to help, how to feel. That became clear when we did our cross-country trip with the crazy media attention that this project got. I was completely overwhelmed. In fact, the video that that was uploaded to Hoopla Ha and Upworthy has been viewed over 7.7 million times, and I've gotten requests from all over the world to share about this. By far, of all the groups that I get to speak to, I love speaking to students. I have a strong belief that it's their enthusiasm and creativity that is going to somehow solve all the many problems that lead to homelessness. I continue to do art exhibits. I've done 30 plus of them in the US and the UK. I typically put up a blank piece of cardboard and ask people to answer the question, what is home? I've now collected thousands of answers to that, and it's striking to me that the answers from the housed are very similar to the ones that are on the street. I want to tell you one more story about a guy I met in Philly. His name was Eddie. When I met him, I did not know he was a heroin addict. We interviewed him, and he's in our documentary, but it was his sign that drew me in initially. Something to ponder: what if God occasionally visits Earth disguised as a homeless guy panhandling to see how charitable we are? I knew right away that I liked Eddie and that he was a street philosopher. Well, about February of 2016, I am doing another talk, and this happened to be the cover photo on my Facebook page. You can see Eddie's sign behind me. So I get this Facebook message from some guy named Eddie Dunn. He says, "You probably don't remember me, but that's my sign. You bought it in Philly, and I want you to know I've been sober for almost 2 years. I've reconnected with my kids, and I appreciate what you're doing." So I said, "Eddie, I'm coming back to Philly. I was doing an exhibit for the Democratic National Convention." I said, "Dude, how about we have lunch?" So we met, we talked for 4 hours. I got to see him look at his sign on the wall, and he started to cry. And that day, Eddie and I became real friends. So much so that in November, when I was asked to do another talk, just this past November, I asked him if Eddie could join me on stage, and he did. Wearing his Wu-Tang Clan shirt and his Philly Flyers hat, he showed pictures of his new grandson and pretty near had me in tears. So that brings me back to home. You probably wonder why Glenda, the good witch from The Wiz, is up here. Home will always be my mother's voice. It will always be the smell of her Cajun cooking, the laughter of my friends. But Glenda summed it up when she said, "If we know ourselves, we're always home anywhere." Thank you guys for having me.
Came up under Wayne, and Wayne has his way of doing things. When Wayne walks on a set and say, "Don't talk to me, get the fuck out of my face and I'm gonna blow in your face all day," it's cool. But every time I put my foot down and stand up for myself, it's like, "We've heard about Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj shut down a photo shoot. We've heard." I'm glad you heard. Now, when I come to a photo shoot, let it be a problem. So if I turn up to a photo shoot and you got a $50 clothes budget and some sliced pickles on board, you want to know what? No, I am going to leave. Is that wrong for wanting more for myself? Wanting people to treat me with respect? Had I accepted the pickle juice, I would be drinking pickle juice right now. When I am assertive, I'm rich. When a man is assertive, he's a boss. He bossed up. No negative connotation behind what's up. But negative connotation behind music.
to make working out fun again. I'm Erica Nix. Let's work out.
Oh, hey.
Oh, hi, I'm Erica Nix. And that was the intro to my web series, Workout with Erica Nix, and how most people in Austin know me. I have always been a ham, as you can see, but I haven't always liked to work out. Today, I want to share with you my unexpected journey to becoming a local gamous fitness guru. In undergrad, I studied photography and started dancing with this garage rock band under the name of Thunder Thighs. Thunder Thighs would do sit-ups while smoking cigarettes and chugging beers, and at the end of the show, she'd weigh herself, get really frustrated, break the scale, and inhale powdered donuts. Now, Thunder Thighs didn't come out of thin air. Like many children of the 80s, I worked out to my mother's VHS tapes of Richard Simmons. And yet I would do the same difficult dances over and over again. There's like 2 hard dances, weigh myself, and then get frustrated nothing had changed. My parents are very loving and supportive in a lot of ways, but in my family, it's as bad to be fat as it is to be gay. And I was terrified of being either or both. So Thunder Thighs was the way for me to exercise those fears in a humorous way. Then my best friend Jessica Gardner asked me to star in my own web series, and the objective was to make working out fun again, and also to always include other queers and weirdos outside of physical culture. These videos became a platform for queer visibility in a body-positive way. The shake weight. I also started exploring products of the fitness industry. Most of them are totally bogus and just made to make money off of people's insecurities. We all know the shake weight's only good for one thing, right? And it's very sexy. Yes, so I created my own sexy workout equipment. I showed these at Mass Gallery and performed a Kegel exercise meditation to climax. Outside of the art world, I use performance as a form of protest. Recently, I helped organize the Queer Dance Freakout at the Governor's Mansion. Yeah. And I think protesting through dance brings more visibility and power through community, and with that brings a greater sense of hope. So through the web series and performances and activism, people started getting interested. They wanted to work out with me. They wanted to perform with me. This is from Outsider Festival 3 years ago at the beginning of Richard's seclusion. And what excites me is that this workout class becomes a cyclical art piece. And my classes grew from 1 to 3 days a week. Workout became a real fitness program. I had created a physical culture for queers and weirdos, but suddenly I was crossing over from fitness personality to an actual fitness coach. Yeah. I felt like an imposter. I was worried that I would maybe put some of my community at risk, so I went to school for personal training. I created a safe place for queers to sissy out, but school gave me the knowledge to do it safely. Unfortunately, Austin's affordable spaces are running out. You know, high rent caused our beloved home center spot to close, but I just made that an opportunity to buy my own business, Transform. Yeah. And one of the magical experiences you can find at Transform is class transitions. We start every class introducing ourselves and our pronoun. I have watched these sweet angels change from she to he to they. It is amazing to watch someone become their true selves. Thank you. And our workouts are unique because I do consider each person's concerns about their body and how it affects their gender, but the real power of the class is the community and their shared experiences and the exchange of knowledge that we have there. I've mentioned him a few times, so it should come as no surprise to you that Richard Simmons is my hero. He is an incredible health advocate. He brought fitness, love, and support to a group of people that no one seemed to care about. Yes, and I got to meet him. I was also actually in his latest workout video, Project Hope. He is the biggest queen you will ever meet. And at the end of the shoot, he took me aside, told me my future, and made me cry. Come on, let's all in the Richard Simmons spirit work out! Come on, come on. Bounce. You can bounce anything you want to. You can bounce your chest. I don't see many people bouncing out there. You can bounce your bum. Keep it going. Yes, sway with me. Woo. Again. Other way. Yes. Breathe out. And then. And out. And in. And out. And in. Now follow that. Throw them away. Throw them away. Again. Last time. Yes. Dancers, bow with me. And thank you for working out with us.
All right. That's Brad Paisley, and this image is an approximation of what music is. The Greeks gave us the word music. What it means is the sound the muses make. That speaks to the divine aspect of music we all perceive. The muses were, after all, goddesses. And there's Ray Charles, 1983. Ray was literally music personified. Two things I'm always trying to do when I'm shooting. As time goes by, I try to find the inner form and try to find that decisive moment. I got it on this one. And there's Willie. That's 1979. Probably way before a lot of you guys were born from the sounds of things. It was my first year, 39 years ago. Willie Nelson's the father of Austin City Limits. There would be no Austin City Limits without Willie. He's one of the reasons that Austin is what it is. He's the soul of the town. Now this is Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton, this is an illustration of how the muse works. You pull the inspiration out of the ether, you take it in to focus and amplify in your inner part, and then give voice for everybody to hear. That's how the muse works. That's B.B. King. 1982. B.B. was a force of nature. Before his first heart attack, which this was taken, an original master of the blues. The Times in the day called for newspaper called for black and white. That's what they did it in. So I gave them stark portraits. Here's Bonnie Raitt, 2002. Sometimes you catch an artist coming out of the creative trance, half muse, half Bonnie. This is one of those. It's unposed and it fascinates me, that in-between spot. Merle Haggard, 1985. An icon. How to forge an icon, an image icon. Take a distinctive person with a striking visage, strip away everything unessential, find the purest form and the best expression, use a black background. That's how you forge icons. R.E.M., 2006. When shooting a band, you have to shoot the whole thing as an organic whole, not as a collection of individuals. Can you see the whole thing there? You gotta see the whole elephant. When you can, you push the button. That's how you shoot bands. Dave Matthews Band's coming up. There he is. I need time on this one. I'd like to use this shot to illustrate technique. When a photo is made, the third dimension, depth, is thrown away. You're left with height and width. The artist counts on the human brain to reconstitute depth, but a photographer introduces perspective, the lines on the stage, foreshadowing, that shadow that anchors everything, and the layers that go around it to reconstitute depth. This is Leonard Cohen. 1988, I shot it. It's my favorite all-time artist I've ever shot. He was deep, profound, sacred, and funny as hell. He saw this shot and made it the album cover of his 1985 album, Leonard Cohen Live. Damian Marley, 2006. The shot is all about the moment, the spirit of the moment, zeitgeist of the moment. The spirit is Jamaica. The picture tells us, every picture should tell a story. This one does. Next is Johnny Cash. We're going to get a look at the man. There he is. I call this my Mount Rushmore shot. It looks like it's carved out of granite. He was on his best behavior when he did our show. He really wanted to make a good show, and he only did one. I'm glad he did. He had the entire Carter family with him, including June, and it was an honor to shoot him, much less be in the room with the man. Here we have My Morning Jacket, Jim James, 2008, one of my favorite all-time performers, and a young guy at that. This shot is similar to the Ray Charles shot, except here I have the color washes to work with, so that the solution is wider, taking in the entire band. Form plus moment plus color. Different imperative. Neil Young, 1985. My personal hero and inspiration. Always changing, always new, never sold out, still rocking. I try to include the eyes and shots, but this one with the snarl and the body language, that's all I needed. I didn't need eyes. We're gonna get to see Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters. Here they are. Dave Grohl's a hoot. He really is exactly what he comes across as. He's just a nice, engaging guy. The Sonic Highway show about Austin really nailed it, I thought. Anyway, he loves this shot. He said, "Oh man, I love that shot with my hair like snakes, man. I love that shot." Here we have Aaron Behrens of Ghostland Observatory at ACL Live. This is the shot I always want to get but rarely can. Performer, lasers, audience going crazy, the whole story in one shot. This is what I'm trying for every time. Now here we have coming up Kendrick Lamar. This guy, he's really got it. He's really talented. You can feel the muse just dripping off him. Kendrick and the muse seem to be synonymous, or at least congruent. You can see it in the eyes. And the next shot's also Kendrick Lamar. This shot is a group shot, a wide shot, and you can see the muse in that whole shot. That's the spirit is there. The muse is, works with one, works with us all. The muse is that divine thing that makes us, want to sing, essentially. And let's see, I got one more. Here it is, Nick Cave. Come on, there it is. Sometimes the line between the person and the inspired performer dissolves totally. Sometimes it's clear the divine, inspired part is controlling the show. This is one of those shots. That's Nick Cave. If you've ever seen him, you know what I'm talking about. I've got one final shot to sum it all up, and it's a picture of the muse herself, Regine Chazman of Arcade Fire. I had to show you the muse made flesh. Here she is. Go see Arcade Fire. Just try to take your eyes off this woman. She is incarnated music made flesh. I hope I've shown you what it is I'm trying to do every time I pick up the camera, and how you recognize the divine when the music plays.
Okay, so I'm Josh. This is Nick, my brother. We're filmmakers here in Austin. And we recently completed our first comedy feature. Tonight we want to talk to you guys a little bit about the history of comedy in cinema. This is us plotting our first production, which is a fish out of water story.
So this is Aristophanes. He's the first playwright to have mastered comedy, and he often has plays focused on political satire. Around a millennia later, Shakespeare came around, and he established the basic setup of romantic comedies. Two people meet, some form of conflict happens, and it ends with happily ever after.
This is actually the first comedic scene of film ever. It's 5 seconds. It's Thomas Edison's assistant who sneezes. And later on, Tilly's Punctured Romance comes out with Charlie Chaplin. which is about a crook taking advantage of an innocent woman for her money, hence why it's punctured romance.
Early comedy was restricted by sound technology, which actually probably helped further develop film because it forced it to distance itself from speech, which plays did, and to focus on action. Hence, slapstick comedy was the comedy of the time.
So next up, we have some subgenres of comedy that have sprung up over the years. Comedy of manner, slapstick, screwball, spoof, parody, romantic, dark, fish out of water, buddy comedy, gross, situational. Really, it cycles in and out of popularity, and you never really know what's going to be next. And if you do, you should definitely write a comedy.
Audiences love their slapstick stars like Charlie Chaplin, Maybelle Norman, Fatty Arbuckle. But in 1928, fully synchronized sound was introduced and silent film basically came to an end.
Fully synchronized sound is the introduction, and the jazz singer comes out, which is a huge success. Hollywood realizes that sound is going to be in demand, so talkies broaden the horizon for comedy, providing versatility and humor and jokes. Enter the Marx Brothers, who specifically come to Hollywood because of talkies and want to merge sound and visual eccentric film.
And sound provided two key things that comedy needed: audible dialogue and music. Some movies like Top Hat, you can just look at a picture and hear the song that's playing in the background.
Heaven, we're in heaven. So it happened one night. Actually stars two actors who are not comedians. It's the first time this has happened, and they win 2 Oscars. It's a comedy of manners, which is essentially a rich person falls in love with a non-wealthy person, and class difference humor that begets. So romantic comedies at this time supplied the much-needed reprieve that money is not everything and that love is universal.
And it was also considered a screwball comedy, which comes from the baseball pitch, the screwball. And that's just often where the plot, it's unexpected, a lot of twists and turns, a lot of mistaken identities, secrets being kept. And what was pretty interesting at the time is screwball comedies often had female leads driving the story, which was fascinating at the time in an industry dominated by males.
American boom, 1950, post-World War II. Comedies are about the difference between men and women. These films work to break the stigma around sex and challenge and overturn Hollywood, the moral censor. So national sex symbols like Marilyn Monroe start popping up. This is one of my favorite scenes.
Now, I Love Lucy. Television also started to revolutionize the comedic landscape. And as audience began to flock to TV, comedy naturally followed. And here, episodic storytelling was used to create stories that reappeared for seasons and often spanned many years.
So comedy films in the 60s started bringing back pointed commentary on social and political topics as a focal point of the purpose of the film. Cold War Muck, Dr. Strangelove here criticizes the wartime mindset. And satire becomes a regular function of film comedy to highlight absurdity and topical issues and events.
In comedies in the 70s, they reflected culture, and often you'd see things like anti-war messages conveyed in films. And romantic comedies also started changing around this time, as sex stopped being regarded as a scandal and it was more so the norm. The will she, won't she doesn't cut anymore, and happily ever after stopped being required. You had more films that focused on things like personal happiness and self-discovery, like Annie Hall.
We have Airplane. Another comedy subgenre that gains popularity, often accredited to Mel Brooks, parodies, more specifically spoofs, exercising fast-paced jokes with absurd, sometimes surreal humor, and these well-executed jokes at times being self-referential and breaking the fourth wall.
Around the 80s, teen comedies came around. You had movies like The Breakfast Club, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And they focused on the exploits of teenagers, teenage romance, and the often tough transition we all make, hopefully, into adulthood.
In the 80s and 90s, romantic comedies made a comeback. Movies focused on comedy and romance and intertwined concepts that question themes such as can men and women just be friends? Or certain perspectives as true intimacy is created through friendship. We all remember the orgasm scene in the diner. Nick, do you want to reenact that for us?
I'm okay, thanks. From here, comedy started to pull away from the punchline a little more towards situational comedy. It focused more on just the absurdity of everyday life, and movies like The Hangover, Knocked Up, things like that. They find humor in just the everyday situation and how life can often just be so bizarre.
So as filmmaking becomes more affordable outside of Hollywood, accessibility has given rise to independent filmmakers, and that's what we do. And we don't want to mislead you. Just because it's more accessible doesn't mean it's easy, but luckily we had a lot of great comedy pioneers that came before us. So as in our film, The Golden Rut, we pay homage to a lot of the greats that we talked about tonight.
Yeah, comedy is a great tool to measure society's progression. And if you do things like look at comedy now compared to the start of the 20th century, you can see how far we've came. You can see our roots, see how we've developed, and see sometimes even censorship was taken down. And while we hope to make films that enact that sort of change, if we can't do that, we at least hope to give you a laugh. And as George Bernard Shaw said, if you want to tell people the truth, make them laugh. Otherwise, they'll kill you.
I'm not going to dance for you. I'm known a little more for standing, but I do want to talk to you about what I'm doing in this next chapter in my life, Deeds Not Words, which seeks to answer a question that I'm asked by young women all the time. What do we do? And what we do at Deeds Not Words is work to create the next generation of filibusterers. We have a mission to aggregate, to amplify, and to activate and empower young women. We aggregate actions digitally in multiple ways, but this is a screenshot of the staging for our new site. It's an improved website that's going to launch later this month, and it will showcase the work of our allied organizations, only a few of which are shown on this slide. And after sorting our allies by areas of passion, whether it's your passion around women who work, how we increase our voices, how we protect our health and our safety, a site visitor is able to see a synopsis of the work that organization is doing, and most importantly, how they can plug in through tangible actions the deeds we need. We also aggregate humans in person to foster intersectional and intergenerational collaboration. This photo is from a forum we co-hosted in Dallas, where students and experts on sex trafficking from the judicial system, academia, and more gathered to discuss trafficking prevention in our state. And in addition to aggregating actions and people to solve this and other issues, we help to amplify that. And that's what this slide is all about, helping people in Texas understand exactly how big this problem is. We amplify this sort of information via various channels, one of which is our weekly newsletter, The Deeds Digest, where we educate and hopefully inspire civic action. And each week we end that newsletter with a do, something that we're asking our audience to do to make a difference. We amplify the work of our allies via social media too, and not just to help connect our followers to tangible action, but to lift up the amazing organizations and change makers across this state and across this country into public consciousness to inspire others as well. And one of the ways that we use social media to amplify and activate is through our Deed of the Day, an attainable daily call to action that change makers can commit to each and every day. And this one pictured helped to connect activists to legislative action right here in Texas. But the actions we showcase are diverse in nature and in terms of geographic accessibility to engage our national audience. The action pictured here facilitated sending Mother's Day cards to immigrant mothers. And this action was a call for art as a part of a contest to design a new mural for the Whole Woman's Health Clinic in Fort Worth. And as many of you know, Whole Woman's Health just reopened their Austin clinic. Congratulations to them. Sometimes we promote what we call the power of the purse, like when we compelled our change makers to boycott Red Bull after their CEO made xenophobic and inflammatory remarks about refugee communities. And beyond amplifying these actions to our audience of over 1 million collective followers on our social media channels and newsletters, we also activate students through in-person advocacy trainings like the one that we held at UT with the college students there. We taught them about the power of sharing personal story to persuade, and because of them, we passed 7 bills in the Texas legislature this session. And similarly, we coached high school students to find their voice, and here they are in Senator Zaffarini's office actually helping to write a bill that would create a curriculum to help students protect themselves against sex trafficking. I'd like to share the story of one of these students who advocated for the bill, Kiera Jones of Skyline High School in Dallas, who is pictured here testifying before the Texas House Committee on Public Education. We first met Kiera at the forum that we held in Dallas that I mentioned before, where she delivered a powerful spoken word piece that put herself and all who listened into the shoes of a trafficking victim. We helped her amplify her powerful voice beyond that room, showcasing it on our YouTube channel and featuring it in our newsletter and on social media to inspire others, helping people to see that sharing our personal story, as so many women did by sending their letters for me to read on the Senate floor, can inspire others to act. We next saw Kiera at a storytelling training that we led at her high school, a majority-minority magnet school where we walked her and her fellow students through how they could translate their voice in a legislative session to making real change on an issue, and boy, did they. Not only did she and other students from her school and other schools around the state testify for the bill in committee, but she impressed the members so much that Representative Linda Koop from Dallas came to thank her after hearing her. Now, your voice can help too in the form of design, and we knew tonight we'd have an opportunity to be in front of a lot of folks who are artistic. These t-shirts, of course, have helped to inspire people to own our voices, and we're working on doing the same thing. We would love your help. God bless you, and thank you so much.
It says I'm a musician, and that's strange to me because that's a job that I've worked for 10 years without any monetary reward. It's a job that people probably see as kind of a deviant lifestyle, and it's a job that your uncle might do as a weekend hobby. I have pictures of female mariachis up there because my first exposure, my first movement by being moved by music was being moved to tears by female mariachis on my 7th birthday. I was scared. I was so scared of the bellowing women. Youth in Asia, that is my high school cover band, classic rock cover band. None of us could get dates to the dance. After high school, I ended up in New York City to study something called experimental theater. I really didn't get it. I never got it. They tried to teach us how to use our bodies as a canvas, a tool, an instrument. And I was persuaded, I was talked to often by my professors. I developed a drug habit and I dropped out of college. And I'm not blaming my professors. That's one of those things that people do. I went traveling, I went couch hopping. I reunited with Andrew Cashin, who you might recognize from Youth in Asia, the famous high school cover band. Andrew's been my writing partner for 15 years. In a 15-year partnership, I've learned about love, hatred, apathy, codependence, competition, cooperation, and chemistry, none of which applies to Britt Daniel, my dear friend and mentor. He's been looking over my shoulder for about 4 years now and helped a giant dog get signed to Merge, and then I helped him learn how to use chopsticks in that center picture. Costumes are really important to my performance. Through the years, my body's become a canvas, a tool, an instrument, like they wanted me to learn at the experimental theater wing. I just had to learn it my own way. I wear very little because I want to keep from overheating or snagging. My performance has been a 10-year social experiment in sexual energy, human anatomy, and reaction. The interaction between my body and my audience plays something like this, the way I see it. I come out overtly sexual. There's a reaction. Then, as you watch me just relentlessly having my way with the space around me, there's an acceptance, then a desensitization, and then an understanding. My goal is to help people understand their own sexual energy, help understand the basics of human nature, to make us all very similar so we can stop shaming ourselves and each other. Tits! Content. Andrew composes a lot of the music, and I'm mostly the lyricist. I want to see you with your sagging tits. I want to see you with your jeans all split. I want to kiss you when your teeth all rot and all your memories have been forgot. That song will never be on the radio, but it's on our new album. The new album by A Giant Dog is coming out August 25th, and it addresses such themes as the loss of sanity, lust, aging, and gun law. Next, you're gonna see a live clip, and it might go kind of quickly. Performance is about rage, destruction, and avoiding getting your teeth knocked out because you don't have the money to get them fixed. This is a dance rehearsal for my pop band, Sweet Spirit. This was their first dance rehearsal in their lives. We first rehearsed in my carport, and then we went to practice yoga after hours. The boys were a little hesitant, but they all had it in them. They just had to find it. I recently began collaborating on filmmaking, and my first lesson in producing film has been on my own music videos. I did a series of 3 music videos in 1 week in March, right after South by Southwest. This is a designer named Sasha Glosser, a little younger than me from LA. She's a fabricator and a builder of costumes. She and I collaborated remotely. This is me scouting location.
Here's the spot.
That's Lano. It was about a 15-minute drive, 4-wheel drive only, straight up a hill, 1.5 miles, and I made my band bring a piano up there. To me, learning about film production and learning about art, making your artistic goals possible, to me it's about rearranging reality to suit yourself. It was like an adult adventure camp. Why is that guy beating the shit out of me? Well, it's because I made a music video where I get to live out my fantasy of being a pro wrestler. I was gonna show you a clip next, but I think this is the wrong clip. So you'll have to wait a couple months to see the one on top of the mountain where I kill a giant. This is my band, A Giant Dog. We're on top of the GSD&M roof. Parking lot. Some of you probably work there. Wendy Williams is this punk princess up top. She would slap me for calling her a princess, to be honest. She built her own costumes out of nails and whatever she could find, tape, and she'd just scare the shit out of all the rocker men around her. She was friends with Lemmy, and we used her as an inspiration for Bend Over, our newest single for A Giant Dog. We filmed it with pyro in 8 takes. Our record label Merge is very happy with it. And I've never looked better. A Giant Dog, Toy, that's our next album. It's the thing I'm talking about most because it's out August 25th. And tomorrow morning, after packing all night and staying up all night and driving myself insane, I get on the road and I start trying to generate excitement about this album. That monster's name is Jennifer, and she's built by Andrew Cashin. If you want to know what drives me as an artist, what fuels me, my answer is really boring. I'm a workaholic, and it's work. And it's work that I like. My years of rage and youthful energy and liquor and drug-fueled rock and roll have evolved into a constant and focused love of my work. And I love having the new and constant goals. It gives me gratification that replaces the vices that I used to enjoy in my youth. Thank you, Sabrina.